Lex Luthor, General Zod, Doomsday, Brainiac, Metallo. Superman does have some impressive villains, but they'd need to be impressive to stand up to Superman, wouldn't they? The man's indestructible and can bench press the moon. If you're taking on Superman, you need to be pretty special yourself. A lot of heavy hitters want Superman dead, but the interesting thing about the villain we're spotlighting today is, he didn't initially want to kill Superman. He instead wanted to kill Clark Kent. Today we're looking at the first appearance of the villain known as Conduit, a human energy manipulator who holds a personal grudge against Metropolis's finest. Spinning out a 0 hour. This is peer pressure. Decades ago, on the dying planet Krypton, a mother and father say goodbye to the son. Jor-El and Lara save the life of baby Kal-El by launching him from his doomed homeworld, sending him to a safe planet galaxies away. And on that very planet, plot twist, it's Earth where I'm from. A woman in labour is forced to give birth in a broken down car as Kal-El's craft streaks overhead, bathing Smallville in a Kryptonian glow. Baby Kal is discovered by two kindly farmers who adopt him as their own, leading to all sorts of crazy crap for the people of Earth. But it's all worth it, because it gave us Superman. He's been through a lot recently. In fact, he's just got home from stopping the timeline from collapsing in on itself. Lois Lane knows his secret, and the two still work at the Daily Planet newspaper, and they are dating, but they're not married, probably because of Clark's ponytail. Speaking of the Daily Planet, Clark gets some mail. It's a photograph from Clark's 5th birthday, a birthday shared by a kid called Kenny Braverman. But someone has cut Clark out of the picture. Weird, but Clark doesn't seem too bothered. He's definitely dealt with worse. Lois thinks it's worth talking about. It was a bit weird after all, but before Clark can change the subject, he and Lois are nearly struck by fallen bricks. Clark can't see any assailants, even with supervision, but we sure can. This armoured antagonist just tried to murder Clark Kent. Returning safely to Clark's apartment building and in the elevator going up to Clark's place, he opens his mail to find himself cut out of another childhood memory. Whoever the harasser is, he knows where Kent works and lives. Clark once got the lead role in a school play because Kenny was out sick, something that apparently happens quite often. With another cherished memory tarnished, Lois tries to cheer Clark up when suddenly, the lift cable snaps. For the second time that day, Lois would have been killed if not for Clark's otherworldly powers, and we find out fast this was no accident. The same masked mastermind has struck again, and he's decided to stop being sly about killing Clark. He's done messing around. A sudden inferno at an orphanage sounds like a job for Superman. The fire brigade suspect arson, but they won't answer questions from Lois or any other reporter present until the blaze is put out. And Superman saves the children in a cool way, bunching them all up in his cape, keeping them all safe from the fire. Outside, we discover that it was arson. That same armoured mystery man who spent the day trying to kill Clark Kent hopes that the third time will be the charm. He set the flame to draw Kent in, and now, using the fire as cover, he's gonna blow Clark away. Only that's not Clark, it's just someone who dresses like him. Superman re-emerges from the fire just in time to rescue these two, leaving the mystery villain seething. Things settle down somewhat, until Clark receives yet another spoiled souvenir of his past. Another adventure of young Clark Kent, featuring this Kenny Braverman kid again, in which Kenny nearly caused a forest fire before Clark saved the day. 3 near-death experiences, 3 letters of Clark's past. Lois starts seeing a pattern. Bloody hell mate, this cover's sicker than Kenny Braverman. A night watchman catches a criminal in the act of placing a bomb and dies for it. The new supervillain obsessed with destroying Clark Kent finally tells us his name. Conduit. Cool suit, and he can disintegrate people with his tendrils. I hope he explains why he doesn't just try and use his tendrils on Clark. We know it probably wouldn't work, but he can't know that because he doesn't know Clark's secret. At Clark's apartment, Lois finds a box full of Clark's childhood achievements sent by his mum, that's nice, and she ponders if his superpowers didn't make the competitions a little bit unfair. Clark lets her know he's never, ever used his powers to get ahead, he's always played fair. He recalls how before his powers were unleashed, he and childhood buddy Kenny Braverman were always neck and neck in competition, with Clark always just barely coming out on top. Everyone in town, including Kenny's own father, seemed to overlook Kenny in favour of Clark, and not just in sport, but in class, love, and life in general. Kenny was forever in second place, always in Clark's shadow. But the past is the past. In the present, Clark has apparently been nominated for an award in journalism. The whole gang's here. There's Perry White, he's Clark's boss. Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen. There's that Ron fella from last issue. And look what Lois is wearing. And Clark won. He gets a LexCorp Baldy Award for his reporting on the 0 Hour Crisis. Baldy. Clark's acceptance speech, though, gets cut short, not by music, but by an explosion. Armed mercenaries swarm the room on Conduit's orders to ensure Clark Kent is finally dead, but instead of bodies of ash, they find a man of steel. Superman stops the bombers, but before he can interrogate them, Conduit silences his goons. Clark was lucky this time no one got hurt, but this can't go on. It's only a matter of time before someone innocent dies in the attempts on Clark's life. A threat on his front door makes Clark see the truth. But who is Conduit? And why does he have such a bitter hatred for kind, friendly farm boy Clark Kent? Kenny Braverman. Sick of the world ignoring him in favour of Clark, Kenny plans to take Kent out of the picture so that he can be the winner for once. Jesus dude, Conduit's done screwing round here. He's got a high-powered rifle locked on to Clark's apartment as Clark and Lois goof off painting. Conduit can hear Clark thanks to his sonic rifle, but he won't risk taking the shot until he can see the man himself. Lois insists that Clark start focusing on the threats to his life, and Clark does have some ideas about who's trying to kill him. He remembers one summer he had in Paris, learning journalism, as eavesdropping Kenny recalls that same summer that he spent being experimented on by the CIA, being augmented into a weapon. The regularly unwell Kenny had begun to develop superpowers of his own somehow, and he was looking forward to beating Clark at something for once. Kenny and Clark both had a chance to prove themselves, Clark as a reporter and Kenny as a killer. And the paths do cross once again in Paris, where Kenny tells Clark that he plays the cards fate deals him, and he plays to win. The CIA had sent Kenny on a false flag operation to lead an attack that'll paint insurrectionists as terrorists and stop Clark's big break. But luckily, Clark spots the bomb in time, and even though it cost Clark the job of his dreams, he saves the day anyway. Once again, Kenny loses. But not this time, oh no. This time, he's going to blow that stupid smirk right off Kent's face. Clark reveals the point of the story was that he always puts others before himself, and he never regrets it. So it's weird to him having to put himself first. Kenny catches a glance at Kent and lets loose. But all he hits is the mirror. Oh, and he's at it now, mate. Because is that a bird? Is it a plane? No, it's Superman, and he's not happy. Finally, face to face, Superman kicks some ass before Conduit coughs out that he plays the cards fate deals him, and he plays to win. A motto Clark knows well. X-ray vision confirms that Conduit is Kenny. Taken by surprise, Conduit gets a good blast off at Superman, and it's a pain the Man of Steel has felt before. Kryptonite. Weakened, Superman plummets into the river, barely conscious. The question of how Conduit got access to kryptonite radiation will have to wait. This new villain's still at large. Lois might be in danger. Luckily though, it seems Clark's the only one Conduit wants dead. He fled the scene as soon as he was out of Superman's sight. And he retreated to his secret base at an abandoned theatre, As a cool little detail, the man who would be king is relevant to Conduit's character because if not for Clark Kent, he would be everyone's #1 guy. As we've already seen at the award show bombing, Conduit doesn't work alone. Pipeline, a secret organisation of intelligence officers, do the busy work as Conduit does the bloody work. We take another trip into Conduit's past to try to make some sense of how innocent Kenny Braverman became this cold-blooded killer. The CIA had upgraded Kenny's natural gifts, but his powers corrupted him. He was a loose cannon. The rabid dog needed to be put down, but monsters don't die easy. Betrayed by his handlers and again feeling the sting of a failed father, Conduit went rogue. No longer held back by his government, Conduit joined its rival, Pipeline, and no one could control him anymore. Clark hasn't stopped worrying about his friend turned foe, and he checks in on his mum and dad back in Smallville. But Conduit hasn't done anything to them, just like how he left Lois alone. Clark recalls his last meeting with Kenny, where his old friend won over a girl Clark was friends with, as if trying to take something away from Clark. Superman begins to wonder if it was planned by the villain all along. Later that day, the Daily Planet is the news, as the mayor gives thanks for the paper's hard work. All the staff are front and centre, making Clark Kent an easy target. Conduit and his Pipeline goons strike, and Kenny throws caution to the wind. He's willing to kill everyone there as long as he gets Clark. And Clark considers revealing his secret to save his friends, but instead he manages to sneakily fall out of sight. And as soon as Clark Kent vanishes, here comes Superman. But the last time Superman confronted Conduit didn't end so well for the Man of Steel. He needs to be careful here. Superman leads Conduit to a less populated battlefield and swoops in from behind, but Conduit's terrible tentacles snake around Superman, dripping with kryptonite radiation. Superman can't handle these kryptonite-laced coils for long. He leads Conduit to Centennial Park, hoping the open air will give him enough room to maneuver. Conduit's combo of energy blasts and irradiated tentacles give him the edge. Kenny knocks Superman down on his own memorial statue and comes up close for the killing blow, but that was Conduit's mistake. With Conduit within reach, Superman suddenly jumps him, crushing his weapons to dust and leaving Kenny in second place again. Clark feels terrible about Kenny, even though he didn't intend for any of this to happen. Swearing revenge now on both Clark Kent and Superman, Conduit is taken away. The threat on Clark Kent's life ended. For now, anyway. I thoroughly enjoyed this story, and the character of Conduit. Childhood friend turned enemy adds a nice emotional aspect to the story. Superman can't just charge in throwing punches. He has an attachment to this villain, and he doesn't actually want to harm him. I don't think Kenny Braverman was ever mentioned before this story, so it's not much of a twist when he's revealed to be the baddie, but the story itself gave enough backstory and reasoning behind him going evil that it did still work. I like the idea that he doesn't initially hate Superman and that it's Clark he despises. Cool suit, cool powers and a cool history. Then flashbacks of how Clark saw the relationship, contrasted with how Kenny saw the friendship, was a brilliant way to give us insight into both of the minds. You need to be something special to battle Superman, and while Kenny's life as a CIA operative gave him the smarts he needs to keep up, his brains paired with his powers certainly did make him a threat. It's discovered later that Conduit's radiation powers and his perpetual sickness were from kryptonite radiation poisoning he got on the day of his birth when Kal-El's ship passed overhead. Another way Clark ruined his life. It really shows Clark's character how he feels so bad when he really did nothing wrong, but that's just the kind of fella Superman is. The art on these issues was incredible. Comics should never have stopped looking like this. It's perfect. I need to read more of this era of Superman. This was great.